Hey, what's up my writing friends? Welcome back to my AuthorTube channel. I'm Autumn Ashley, and today I'm going to be giving you guys the entire recap of what was going on for the last 2 weeks of NaNoWriMo. If my voice sounds a little congested, it's because it is, you know, change of weather. It's been a mess. I vlogged a little bit of our NaNoWriMo weekend write-a-thon, and that's when I was able to finish everything for my novel. But because that weekend was 3 days of back-to-back writing sprints, it was just really hard to do all of the writing and then during my breaks or in between sprints to sit down and give you guys a little bit of the recaps. I was able to recap during some of the writing sprints, but I was so focused on working on my story, trying to finish it all before Thanksgiving in the United States. It was a lot and I haven't looked at the footage, but I don't feel like I did a very good job of actually explaining what was going on during all of the sprints and when I was in the moment of actually working on everything. This video is going to be a combining the last 2 weeks of NaNoWriMo, but really it's like 3 days worth of writing. For this vlog, I was working on 2 of the secondary characters. One of them was the love interest, and the other one was another secondary character, which we're gonna get into the specifics of that character later, but I don't think that character, after doing all of this, I don't think they're going to play as big of a role in the story as I originally thought that they would. First, let's back up to the week of something. We're gonna back up to the week of Sunday, November 14th to Saturday, November 20th. So the only writing that I did during that whole week was, if I'm remembering correctly, it was only on that Friday and Saturday. I worked the first 4 days of the week. The 5th day was a recovery day, which means Friday and Saturday, the last 2 days of the week, was the only time that I had to work on my love interest. My love interest is probably by far maybe not my favorite character, but he's pretty high up on that list of characters that I really enjoy. So for my love interest, I did a backstory, and I really liked his backstory. The way that I originally had it, like back when I was drafting in draft 1, I wanted the love interest to be very likable at first. I just wanted you to immediately fall in love with him as the reader, and because I did, but I felt like he was very one-dimensional at first. So when I started to dive deeper into his backstory and where I want like the lore to go, oh my gosh, I hope this person does not park right here. Really, there's a whole freaking parking lot. That's right. That's right. Anywho, the more I was working on the backstory for this character, I realized that he had a darker past because of like the whole family tree type thing. And the more that I learned about him, I discovered that maybe him not being likable at first was like the best route, because I kind of wanted a little bit of mystery around him. And with that mystery came a different kind of, I don't want to say a different kind of behavior, but he acted a little bit differently. I like that. At first you're on the fence where you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna like him. I don't know if he's like the best love interest. But as I was working on a few of the scene cards for my love interest, I really discovered that the way he is and the way he acts, it makes sense. So for the weekend write-a-thon, I spent the first 2 days working on my love interest, which was the building of the backstory, and I wrote 2 separate scenes about my love interest. I feel like it made him much more well-rounded. I think that was a very good route. And changing my love interest where he's not as likable at first, I feel like it's more logical for him to be like that. It just makes sense for him to be the way that he is, and for the other characters, especially my main character, Brina, to respond to the way he is a little bit differently. And I feel like it added an extra layer to the story too, where it wasn't just like, oh, they're great, they were in love before the story even started, they are destined to be together. Yes, the more I wrote about that secondary character and the more I came to understand him, it just made so much more sense for him to not be how I originally wanted him to be. With it adding that extra layer into the story, it's also keeping in mind that it's still just like a subplot. It's not the main focus of the story. That was my love interest, and I do feel like I learned a lot about him, and I think doing his 3 scene cards was a very smart idea, so I'm glad I chose him to work on. And now we're going to move forward to my other secondary character. The secondary character, my idea of her, I wanted her to be like a mirror image of my main character, where if these things in the story didn't happen, this is kind of the life that Brina would have. That was my original idea. For the week of November 21st to the 27th, the only day that I actually wrote anything was on that Sunday, November 21st, because we were still doing the NaNoWriMo weekend write-a-thon, and I actually finished working on my scene cards and everything that I wanted to do for NaNoWriMo on that Sunday, which was why I didn't work on my story writing wise for the rest of the month. I believe I started working on her on the Sunday. It may have been at the tail end of Saturday into Sunday, but I worked on her backstory and also wrote 2 scene cards for her too. And the more I wrote this character and the idea that I had for her being the mirror image of Brina and what Brina's life would look like if she was not on the path that she is currently on, which is why we have this story, the more I wrote that, I don't think I like it. I don't think I like how I have that character. I don't know if it's because the character, her role is, I don't want to say not as important, but her role's not as big as I think that I originally wanted her role to be. I think she's going to be more of, I guess they're like supporting characters where they're kind of just sprinkled throughout, versus her 2 sidekicks who follow her through the whole story, and her love interest who is there a lot more often than this character. So I think this character is going to have a much smaller role in the story, and I think once I get back into drafting and I work on the 2nd draft and the 3rd draft and I read through all of the drafts and do the edits, I think it will paint a clearer picture for me what exactly her job is going to be. That is something that I noticed with this secondary character. I do like the character. I just don't think her role in the story is going to be as big as I normally thought it was going to be. But I did discover that by doing these scene cards and building her backstory. I still feel like it is very important to build that backstory for all of the characters, even though the reader may never know any of this. It's important for me to know, and it's important for me to understand where this character and all the other characters came from, so I can build a much more stronger story. That's her and her backstory. I do enjoy her backstory. It probably wouldn't be something I would include in the story, depending on how big her role is, but if she is going to be kind of a mirror image to Brina, I don't really need to explain her backstory, because that would be kind of explaining the same backstory twice, which would be not important. That wouldn't make sense. That is something that I noticed as I was building this character, that she may not be as important into the story as I originally thought that she would be. The more we draft and the more we figure out about the story, the more it will become clear how important she is, or if she's important at all. That's something I wanted to talk about and to keep in mind for myself about her in the story. I just wanted to take like a quick little mini break to say that NaNoWriMo weekend write-a-thon was freaking awesome. In 3 days, I wrote 6 scene cards for 3 scene cards for 2 different characters and 6 scene cards total, as well as some other things once I finished NaNoWriMo. That weekend write-a-thon was so flippin' fun. I got so much writing done. We had so many people come out writing with us, whether they were on screen, they were hosting, they were hopping into the comments saying hello. We had such a big turnout, and thank you to everyone who was in the comments, a co-host, a host. It was amazing. It was probably the most fun live stream or write-a-thon that I had ever been a part of personally. I loved that. That was really fun, and I hope everybody else enjoyed it, and special thanks to everyone who did co-host and host. I'm gonna leave all of them linked in the description box below, as well as the playlist, so you will always have it if you need people to write with and you just want to see us or see how the weekend went. That was the write-a-thon, and that was everything that I ended up working on. I finished what I was supposed to do. I was not keeping track of word counts. I was just doing however much it took to finish the scenes and those scene cards and the backstory, however many words that ended up being. And this was also something too that I had noted with like the sidekicks and my antagonist. A lot of their backstories were very well-rounded and clear, where I knew where their direction was going to go, versus the last character that I worked on, the one that is kind of like the mirror image of Brina. I noticed that I was writing a lot less for her, and it could have been because NaNoWriMo was coming to an end, that feeling of burnout of constantly writing. All of those could have been factors as to why I was writing less. Or it could have just been that the character was just not as important to the story that I originally thought that she was, which that's a possibility too. Only time will tell. What did I end up doing after I finished what I wanted to do for NaNoWriMo, and with me finishing that on November 21st. So last week, which was Sunday, November 21st to Saturday, November 27th, I did not do any writing, but I started reading Save the Cat because I felt like I was in a good spot in my story where I did the scene cards, I dove a little bit deeper into my secondary characters, I got a little more familiar with the story before I start doing my first read through of draft 1. Felt like this was I needed this. I needed this for the pacing, for structure, for understanding that what I'm going to be looking for when I'm going to be doing my edits. I'm not finished. I'm about halfway through, so I want to finish this by next Wednesday, which is the 8th. So next week I'm going to tackle the nitty-gritty about how I'm going to be doing my edits for draft 1. So if that's something that interests you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you'll know what I'm going to be doing when I start reading through draft 1 of Project Brina. I am reading Save the Cat right now, and so far I like it. I think it's great for beginners, and what I'm seeking diving into the editing of draft 1, like structure, pacing, that's really, I feel like this is a good start for me personally. That's what I did all last week. I did a little bit of reading as well as hanging out with family because it was a holiday, and work because that's what adults do. It's December 2nd. We are finished with NaNoWriMo, completely moving past it, but I am happy to say that I was able to finish everything that I wanted to do for NaNoWriMo, even though it wasn't the traditional 50,000 words. All of the goals that I set for myself for NaNoWriMo were able to be achieved. Now, moving forward, what are we doing now that we are finished with NaNoWriMo? We have a draft 1 that was not completed during NaNoWriMo, but we did Preptober stuff, which was prepping my secondary characters, and in NaNoWriMo, I worked on crafting these secondary characters a little bit more, dove a little bit deeper into their stories and their backstories and their connection with my main character. Now, for December, I will talk a little bit about what I want to do for December, since December is also going to be a very busy month. There's no writing that's going to be going on in December. It's going to be reading, a lot of reading, because I still have my TBR of published novels that I would like to read. I have a beta read that I have to get through, and I want to start working on reading my draft 1. Something that I've been telling myself since the very beginning, since I started writing the first draft of Project Brina, that when I dive into my edits, I don't want to dive in and just start editing and start rewriting, flipping things. I don't want to do any of that. What I want to do for my first read through, I want to do just that. I want it to be a full read through of the hodgepodge garbage that I wrote 6 months ago for my first read through. The only thing I'm going to be doing is reading through and taking notes. And the notes that I want to take are small notes. I'm really just going to be focusing on the content of draft 1 and just fumbling my way through it and seeing if there's anything salvageable. That's what I'm really going to be focusing on for the first read through of draft 1. Just based off of memory, I have been working on breaking apart the main plot of the story as well as trying to figure out some of the subplots. I haven't reread anything quite yet, but I have been, just based off of memory, going back and trying to figure out the main plot point of the story and if there are any subplots that are weaved in there, and going back and rereading the first draft of the story, I will see if any of those subplots that I'm currently thinking of now are in the story, or if I had ideas for subplots and then they just kind of like fell through, or did everything fall through? The read through of this first draft should be interesting. I'm going to document that whole journey and probably laugh through the whole thing because it's probably gonna be a hot mess. That's my NaNoWriMo wrap up and what we have to look forward to in December. Going to be vlogging all of that so I can share that journey with you guys, and yeah, that's everything I got for you guys for today. I hope you liked this huge overhaul of half on December 2nd and some footage all through the NaNoWriMo weekend write-a-thon. Thank you guys so much for watching this video and following my journey. Please be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed, I would love if you subscribed and you can be part of my writing journey, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.